Hi, welcome to Glitters of Life podcast. I am your host Rohit Kokane, and we are back with another exciting episode. And today I have with me Abby O'Sullivan, who is a podcast host and producer, and she's very passionate about podcasts, self care, and keeping life humorous. And we are going to have a great conversation with her. So, if you ask me, like, what's the topic for today? It's everything about her life and how she has evolved into various areas of her life. So, we are going to talk about, as I said, like
Mm.
about her passions, so that is how it is going to be. Abby, welcome on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Definitely, it's such a going to be an interesting conversation. So, Abby, first of all, I want to know like how important is humor in your life, especially when the life is always stressful and we are doing a lot of things. And I have seen like you have got a great sense of humor. So, would love to know that.
That's a great question, because I feel like I lead with that a lot, now because it really, like, if we can't laugh about a lot of things in life, what are we gonna do? I mean, sometimes things are just so stressful or so wild that if we aren't finding a reason to just have a little giggle about something, then we might just cry or be sad and depressed all the time, because there is a lot of serious stuff going on in everyone's lives, and it can be really overwhelming. And I would say, from my own personal perspective, that it does play a lot into my life, daily interactions with people, and just I think I like to make people laugh, and I like them to leave feeling a little bit better. And that also probably stems from, as a child, wanting to deflect attention, like kind of wanting attention, but not being fully comfortable with it. And so you use humor as sort of a shield, to make others laugh, and hopefully they like you. Sometimes you use it to deflect confrontation, so there can be some self-deprecation and deflection there, but it's all the things. And I definitely, I like to laugh in general. I like to be amused, and so I try to find those moments, because otherwise I just get into my head too much. It can be very, a self-critical place sometimes, too much overthinking. And so sometimes just breaking it up with something silly is like, oh, okay, it doesn't have to be so serious.
So interesting perspective, Abby. And what was the last joke that you laughed at? Would love to know that.
The last joke that I laughed at, um, uh, well, actually, I mean, that I laughed really heartily, or that I giggled at. I listened to a someone's podcast intro today, and I giggled because I realized, I think it was a child that did, like, their one of their kids that did their intro, and I was like, because otherwise I was like, that's going to be a really interesting podcast, because it's a very childlike sounding voice. And then I realized, I was like, oh, I think that's a kid, and so I kind of giggled at that because I thought that was really cute. Um, but I don't know. I see, just random stuff on the internet. I see random stuff on dating apps. So sometimes I have a little laugh at these other people's expense, I guess. And just the whole dating world in general is it, you I mean, if you don't laugh, you just will be sad. I'm a single
Yeah.
person, by the way. Single cat mom.
Great
So,
to know
like,
that.
yeah, you have to laugh, or you would be like, "Oh, this is what's happening."
Yeah, and there are plenty of ways that we can find humor, we can laugh at things. And again, it's a very different joy, and we just have to cherish those moments. We have to find those moments. And as you said, like internet is a crazy place. Even today, I was exploring some kind of meme pages, and I just could relate to those memes totally because
Yeah.
they are so humorous, they are so on point, and then whatever message they are trying to give, it just stucks the chord, and then you just start realizing, oh, it's so funny and it's so relatable. So definitely
Yeah.
great insights. And if you had any kind of a superpower for a day, but it is completely useless for your daily life, what it would be, and why you want to have that superpower?
A superpower that I would like to have that's useless for everyday life. I mean, the first one that came to my mind is flying. That's not totally useless, but
Useless, yeah.
I don't have a thing. I really don't. I'm not a fan of heights. I will fly in a plane. I have no problem with that. Love flying, but I have like a fear of heights. So I don't know if that would be useful to me or if I'd be able to embrace it because it's my superpower. But then I could skip traffic
Yeah.
and fly around the world. I guess I was thinking like everyday life. I'm like, oh, I could skip all the traffic lights, but I could maybe fly around the world like Superman or something.
Yeah, even I do have that fear of height, but then each and every time, whenever I get the opportunity, I just try to like deal with those moments. I'll be going on to those adventure sports and all, so just trying to get rid of all that kind of a fear. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great superpower. We can skip traffic, we can reach at destination on a usual time, so we'll be having a plenty of time to do a lot other things, I would say.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah,
not completely useless, but
right.
if I get over the fear of heights, useful. If not, then it doesn't matter.
Right. So, Abby, we had this tinge of humor while starting, but if I have to ask this, like, did you always know what you wanted to do with your life? Because as a human, we are always evolving. We never know like where the life is going to lead to us. So, how did you find your purpose, and how did you stumble upon it?
Well, that's a great question too. I went to college for a little while for majoring in psychology. And I actually was just kind of talking about this recently because I was watching Mindhunter on Netflix. Again, it's a great show. And I went to school for psychology with an emphasis in legal issues. And I wanted to work with adult criminals. So we have a federal penitentiary here in town that is a medical based facility. So when these crazy guys, these murderous and criminal type and mentally unwell, very unwell people get sick, they end up in our fed med. The fed med is what we call it. And I'm like, I could have been somebody out there, like, dealing with these people. And I left school because I broke up with some, it was a relationship ended. I left school and I ended up in aesthetics. I thought about massage, but I realized I didn't really want to like massage whole bodies. But with aesthetics, you do face, your skincare, makeup, like there's so much you can do and it does involve some massage. And so what I do now is kind of very similar in therapy wise and getting to talk to different people, getting to know different people. I'm curious about why people are the way they are, although I don't really do that with my clients to that extent. But we get to talk about a lot of things in life and have all these different either humorous or life conversations. And so it's a complete 180 though, and the type of person that I work with is a lot happier, right? When they
Yeah.
leave, feeling good about their eyelashes or their skin or whatever we're doing, or just in general, they feel better. That's much different type of work than dealing with a very dark mind. Um, so I just began to realize over the years that what the beauty industry, what that career gave me was a way to make women feel better about themselves, to feel good, to just, yeah, just to feel better about themselves. And then what it gave to me as a person individually was the ability to support myself after my marriage ended and to find a community with a lot of other women who are, single or not single or have kids or not kids or whatever, like the variety, obviously. And through that, then I became a trainer and began educating for lash extensions. And so then I was able to pass on um, like what I had learned and what had changed my life to other people to help change their lives. And this has sort of continued where I've realized that what I take in and what I learn, I love to share with other people. if I'm excited about something, if I try a new restaurant and I love it, if I love a product, I am like, oh my God, I will tell everyone about it. If I don't like it, I'll probably tell you the good and the bad, or just straight up like, man, I'm really surprised, but I did not care for that. Um, but I've learned that that is something that I really enjoy and that I have a natural tendency towards. Um, and so then it's become sort of part of my progression into becoming a personal trainer and then becoming a podcast host. I mean, what better platform than
Yeah.
podcasting to sit down and just be like, you can either tune in or not, but like here I am and I get to share what I've learned, or I get to have other people on and like get their knowledge and share that with other people. And so I've sort of just gradually found that I think that that is part of my purpose. And then I realized how much I really enjoy helping to empower women to like step into their own autonomy, their own power, we say, and to think about themselves a little bit more than we traditionally have. Even like like watching my mom, just even 30 years ago, like it was a very different time for women. And so just really encouraging self-care. It doesn't have to be through like eyelash extensions, but through fitness or using your voice to speak up for what you need or what you want to say, because it creates a lot of really positive change in ourselves individually and then impacts our communities and overall the world. So I think that pretty much sums it up.
All right. Interesting insights, Abby, because you did talk about like helping others. I feel that when we are empowering someone, it's the act of kindness. We are too humble in it and we just give it all. There are no filters attached. And then whatever benefits people can derive from our insights, our wisdom, or the knowledge, it's totally a different feeling for us because we see them growing. We always start learning from what we want to help them with. So that is like it's a win-win situation for both of us, and that is totally kind of a resonatable feeling where we feel that we are acknowledging their accomplishments as well, and it is helping us to grow as well. And you
Mhm.
did a lot of things into your journey, so could we just talk about like starting your first business or anything that you started with um, at the first, and what was the lesson that you learned from that experience?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I started my first business was my aesthetics business. And I was working for some people and that was great, but it wasn't giving me enough variety or making me enough money. And at the time, I was married. So I think that that's a really key thing to insert into the conversation because I had some support. I didn't actually have to go get another job while I was building my clientele because I had that support from my ex husband. By the time that we were separating and getting a divorce, I had built my clientele. I was able to support myself. So I do think that if I could go back and like kind of extract that as a lesson, that it is okay to have another thing that you're doing while you're building the thing that you really want to do. And that has come up again and again for me. Even like currently, I still do lashes a couple of days a week because it's so easy for me to get clients and it's easy money to me now, if you will. I mean, I just can't work as much as I used to because my body hates sitting that much. Um, so it has to, it kind of comes at a price there, but it allows me to do other things that I also enjoy. And I learned trying to do my coaching biz when I went all in, I kind of took that safety net out from under myself. And for some people, that works really, really well. And for me, it was too much stress because of how much I had invested in people. So it could be the same with like if you were renting an establishment for your brick and mortar business, that over investment, it can feel like a lot of pressure. And for me personally, with all the things that happened in my life personally too, it was like too much and I did not do well. I burned out. So I think that's a great lesson for people is just to like know what you can and what you're, I just like reflect on what you really want, what you're kind of, not what you're capable of, because you're capable of anything, but like what you really want, what you want it to look like, and what is security and safety for you in your life and with your family. It's just me, so like I'm not worrying about my kids or anything else. That would be that would have been really irresponsible if I had kids and I was doing I would be so irresponsible in my opinion. I mean, wow, but it's just me. So I get to deal with it. Nobody else is really affected by it. Um, and then, yeah. And so when I started my business, I really, in the beauty industry, it's really easy to just rent a space somewhere. And usually within like a space where there's other professionals that you're working with, like suites. So I worked with other hairstylists, people who did nails. And that was another key thing within that group was networking was really important. And these days we can do a lot of networking online. Like you and I, like, we know each other through Threads. How
Yeah,
amazing is Threads? Like,
absolutely.
I mean, I've used Instagram, I've used Facebook, but Threads instantly pops off. Like, your algorithm is snapped, like,
Yeah,
so fast. I've been amazed and I really enjoy it. But in person networking really, really helped me too. And I would say this for most businesses, even if they're online, some amount of in person networking and relationship building is going to be helpful. Um, I mean, I can see where people would argue against that, and like I am an introvert too. So I kind of get it. And I don't want to go to a lot of meetings, but I think you have to find the right ones and give it a go because you just never know what can come from it or finding the right conferences to go to. So, in the beauty industry, like it's pretty natural for us to network, but building a relationship, a referral relationship with a hairstylist and a nail tech built my business. And then being part of a networking group helped build me professionally and helped build my business. And I also established relationships and friendships that have lasted now like 15 years. So I mean, people that I know, like I could call certain people up and be like, "Hey, like let's get together," or "Hey, like do you know blah blah blah," and they'd be like, "Oh yeah," and it's so cool. So I really believe firmly in that. So I guess that would be relationship building in general, and then the other whole lesson of safety and security.
right. And it's all about the priorities. If we have set it in a right way, I feel that we will be able to network, we'll be able to go and meet the people. And it's not always about the business. It's about making those connections, flourishing with them. And then if the business is coming in directly, it is helpful for both of the people. So this is how the business works. This is how the networking works. And great advice, I would say. So, when we are doing all of this, it gets overwhelming as well. So, how has your approach to self care evolved, like as you passed from different stages of your personal and professional life?
Oh, okay. So a lot because I this is part of the story that I tell a lot to beauty professionals when I'm talking to them because a lot of us in the beauty industry, and I'm sure in other industries as well, you just kind of go, go, go. You take clients, especially when you're building, like you're in hustle mode. Like
Yeah,
you work whenever and you kind of have to. But I also believe there's a way to do that and still look out for yourself that so that in a couple years on the line, when you are busy, your body can still take what you're doing so that you can mentally feel like your well-being is intact, so to speak. And I will acknowledge that there's seasons of business and there's seasons of your life. Seasons of your business, you're going to need certain things more than others. Seasons of your life, same thing. And that kind of goes in with your health and self care. So I used to see, I probably had a roster of like 60 to 70 clients, and I worked 5.5 days a week, usually like a Saturday every other day of every other week. And that's a lot of time. I did usually anywhere from 4 to 6 clients a day doing mostly eyelash extensions. And that is a job where you are sitting in one place for around an hour at least, if it's just like a touch up appointment. Um, and you're using tweezers, it's attention to detail, and you're kind of tend to be hunched over like you look like a shrimp or like a croissant. Like, and so what I always say is like, your body might feel like a crusty old croissant. Like, you crack it and it's all flaky and that's how you feel. Um, and I just got to a point where like my clients were running late and I would get really irritable because I was so back to back and I didn't really book a lunch break. So I didn't schedule one. So I was like, oh, well, I could have used that, 10 extra minutes to like eat something really fast or whatever, but I'm standing here waiting on somebody. Um, and I got to where physically I just didn't realize like how I was sitting and I ended up with numbness and tingling in my ring finger and my pinky finger, which is not great for anyone. It's not great when you're holding sharp tweezers over people's eyes. And so that's kind of concerning. And in our industry, there's a lot of carpal tunnel issues just from repetitive movements all the time. And people end up having surgeries, people cut their hours, they leave the industry. It's it's kind of insane because we're self-care. We're sort of playing with people's faces and we're sitting. Like it's not construction work, but every job has its, common injuries. I did
Yeah.
not know this. We did not talk about this a lot back then in our education. There was like maybe a tidbit on your workspace setup, but not a lot about posture and self care and boundaries and taking breaks and how to write policies and all these things for your clients. And so I learned when I was having numbness and then I was having pain in my hips so bad that I was walking weird. Like, and I was working out, but I felt good when I was working out. But it was like when I was sitting down again, it was awful. And
Yeah.
I ended up spending like thousands of dollars out of pocket in physical therapy just to get my body right. So it's a pretty big, like right there, it's a pretty big wake up call. And that pain, like that physical pain, it gets to you mentally as well. And so when those people are late, like that's not really a big deal, right? Just do what you can, right? I mean, with lashes, you can kind of cut it off and it's going to be fine. Nails, like you have to finish every single one, right?
Yeah.
So like you have to set your boundaries too, and you have to set the business policies and you have to let people know what the rules are, so that everyone just has that like base level of communication and understanding. And so that I am not an irritable, cranky lash person when somebody is 5 minutes late because I'm so stressed about, the next client and my body is in so much pain. So it's kind of a vicious cycle of me not taking good breaks, not really looking out for myself and not knowing business wise, like what I could and couldn't do, and just being afraid to put the foot down, so to speak. And I tell friends sometimes, I'm like, people aren't like, they aren't waiting for us to tell them what to do, but they really kind of are. Because until you give those expectations, there are people who will walk all over you and they
Yeah.
will do whatever they want. They will waste your time and you won't get paid for it. So
That's a different pain.
yeah, so it's like you have to tell them what's up or they're never going to know and they're just going to keep doing it and you're going to be super frustrated and miserable and annoyed, and it's our own doing. So somewhere around that time, I raised my prices, I kind of changed my policies a little bit. That helped like get a few people off my schedule. And I really had to learn with each iteration of my business because I've moved a little bit and I've started my lash business like a few times in different places. I've had to just reaffirm and like really set those boundaries with myself, like I'm not superwoman. I don't want to end up in physical therapy again. So I have to have those scheduling boundaries. I have to know my limits of what I
Yeah.
can do in a day. And I have to really take care of myself. I have to try to drink more water and I have to get up and move and stretch a little bit. And working out has kind of always been like going to the gym has been like that therapy in multiple ways. And I know you like to bike ride. I'm sure you understand like
Yeah.
the clearing of the mind, the physical activity, and just how it makes you feel in your body, day to day. It's kind of saves me. I love it. I think it's great. Building strength in your body is like bar none one of the best things you can do for your health
Yeah.
long term. And then I also started working in mobility because I got a certification. I worked with a trainer who was really into it. And I was like, man, this is really good stuff. And I think people in my industry really need this type of joint health training. And so I certified in it and I use it with my workouts. And that has really helped me in a day to day. It's kind of like yoga, but it's more like strength and stretching combined and to really help reinforce or like maintain your joint health. And it's super nerdy, but like it's like that's helped me with now, being a part-time work from home person, desk job, like you got to get up, you got to keep moving because it doesn't matter if I'm sitting doing lashes or sitting at a computer. Like it's all a weird strain on the body.
Yeah. And it's never too late to realize that self-care is important, because even like I was suffering from cervical spine thing. I didn't like it did an MRI a way back, then I realized that it is not subsiding. I did nothing about it. Then after 2 years I realized it will be a kind of a painful event for me in near future. So then I again relooked at it, and then I could uh, get hold of it, like what the actual cause of it and what needs to be done. So self-care
Yeah.
in all form is necessary. We just have to be very mindful about it, and it's not just about your physical health, but about the emotional health as well, about the financial health. So it goes in each and every area of our life.
Yeah,
That is, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm glad that you decided to take some action and
right,
take care. Yeah, because it's I don't know like a ton about all the different things that can happen to the spine. But man, when your back starts to hurt, when things are off, when your body starts compensating in weird ways, and that pain is it's just there.
right.
Yeah, and it's just so important because it really can. For a lot of people, it can only get worse. When stuff starts to happen, and I feel
Absolutely.
bad for that. Yeah,
And
I
Abby, it happened all at the same time, like with the spine, with the lower back, and I was feeling like, am I getting too older right now?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's young ladies. So I started in the aesthetics industry when I was around like 26, which isn't really like old in the industry, but I am an older esthetician, older lash artist, considering how young the lash artist or the lash industry is. Like I've been around a while, so we're considered like I would like we're like the dinosaurs. And we've been around since like these things were popular. Nobody taught us this and that. Well, like our the information that's out there is like there's so much more information that social media, like you can learn anything on YouTube. And these young ladies that are just out of high school, like they're in their early 20s and they get a couple years in or they get even like a year in without the proper works, without good ergonomics essentially. And they're like, "Ah, my neck, ah, my back." And it's like, yeah, like there's some muscle memory and some getting used to that takes just to do the service. But then when you realize like that you're booking yourself and they feel old in their body and they're like in their early 20s and I'm like, no, this is not right. That's not
That's a
right.
fun story. Yeah. And as you said, like you're older into business, I would just say that older for business, not for dating.
Right. Right. We're still like, oh my gosh, just last week somebody I did not swipe right, but like some young man in his like late 20s commented on my picture that I was a dream cougar. I'm 41. I was like, what? Am I sorry, I keep hitting my wall. I'm like, am I there now? I'm a cougar now. Okay. That's great.
Bring your humor band out and just respond in your hilarious way.
Right? It takes some restraint these days
Yeah.
because I actually used to get into conversations and then you'd be like, well, this is kind of not it's not going to go anywhere, but then you're sort of just doing it for entertainment of yourself and or maybe others. Like I mean, I've shared on Instagram, I can screenshot and send it to all my friends. If you're going to be weird, like other people are probably going to know. I did tell my sister that one just because I was like, really? But now these days I'm like, no, don't give that your energy. This isn't why you're here. don't like open it up, or he'll like figure out who you are or something and
Have
follow you
fun.
on Instagram.
You never know, like at times a person will be so like will be restraining that should I be sending that message or not, should I be talking about into that particular way. You never know, you just have to lead that conversation, so then you'll be able to know where it is leading. Otherwise,
Ex-
if we are
yeah,
just going to swipe like left and right, I see no point in it.
right? Yes, like I mean oh, so like if you want a little lesson there, how I used to be on apps, how I used to date versus now has also changed because there's a lot more intention generally behind where I am now. And when I was post divorce in my early 30s, I had been in relationships like all of my 20s. And I
Yeah.
was in like kind of an adult relationship when I was in college. I was with somebody that was like 5 or 6 years older than me. So I didn't really have like that college experience where like typically in the States, like everyone's like young and having fun and like doing whatever and parties and you make lots of friends. That wasn't me. He was jealous and controlling and it was weird and it was a good thing that I got out of it. And he was a loser. So like I point blank, he was a loser. Anyone would agree. And then I got married. I met my ex husband like 3 months after I broke up with him. And we were together for about 6.5 years. So, like, all of my 20s, I was in a relationship. And now I'm like 29 and I'm like, woohoo, like, I'm acting like the gal who's like in her early 20s. And I had friends who were recently post divorce who were single and they were ready to go out and have a good time too. And so we were kind of having fun. And so, I acted like I wanted to date somebody, but I've had to do a lot of work to figure out like why I was attracting and the people I was attracting and like why this and that, blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, it was like there was just a lack of intention and purpose versus like now it's like I just don't give a lot of chances because of my previous experiences, because it's like, well, I used to like entertain a lot more conversations or a lot more people or be like, oh, I'll give him a chance. He looks like he could be nice. And now I'm like, meh, like there's a lot more judging going on, which is kind of good and bad just because in the dating app world, it can be really superficial. It's just like, that's a whole, like, that's a whole thing.
Abby, I'm going to try and message you. Let's see how it goes. Let's bring out to the world.
I mean,
How
here's the thing, like we're sitting on a podcast. Like this is more I mean, and truly if a guy just wants to get to know me, like please just listen to my podcast and realize like you could possibly end up on it if you don't act right. Like if you're going to be like a super weirdo and perverted or whatever, like I can take it, but I might talk about it later. So just know.
cool thing. And Abby, out of all these blues, like how do you handle criticisms? Do you find or do you see it as an opportunity for growth? Because then whatever good we do, it always comes with criticism, whether it could be
Yeah.
just kind of a criticism or it could be constructive as well.
Yeah, I have would say that I'm better at it now. And I think it depends on like who or why maybe. I think I'm a little better at seeing when people are projecting and trying not to take that personally. And then when people are actually being like constructive, because I will welcome that. And even if I initially am like, and I get a little kind of triggered defense mechanism, I can more easily, or I'm better at these days, taking that in and kind of like, okay, what can I do from there? Um, and that's easy. Like in my professional life as an esthetician, I'm always asking for feedback because I want my clients to like what's going on. And then I can also provide them with information or education if we can or can't or whatever. If it's good to go, like we're good to go. So in that case, I've kind of I would say like recovering people pleaser. So, you want to make sure like people are happy with the service. I grew up in the service industry. I want to make sure people are happy with the service and that they like me and all that stuff, but trying to make it a little bit less about me and like the actual service. Um, and yeah, it's definitely been sort of hit or miss over the years.
Yeah.
Had to work on that one.
We can't impress each and every person. That is something that we have to realize, but it's more of like, for me it's all about like from whom it is coming and why it is coming. If the
Yeah.
person does matter, I'll just see to it, like what do I have to change about it. If it doesn't, then I don't pay a heed to it. And it's more about like, you just have to focus on why, because that is something that you can always go back and see what things you have done, what were the kind of actions you took, and why did that thing happen. So dealing with
Yeah.
criticism is very useful. And again, we did talk about like we can't impress each and every person. So I would love to know from you, like what's the most ridiculous thing you have ever done to impress someone?
uh well, it's usually been hmm.
think
I
think
would say most of those happen in dating situations. And one time, and it's only ridiculous, like this wouldn't seem ridiculous on the surface, but it's ridiculous because of who it was and the way that he was treating me and the actions. It was none of it was like in line. And I was like 19 or whatever. I was 18 or 19 when I was chasing this guy around. And I made him like this really nice basket of like self care stuff, like kind of girly, but like nice. And I don't remember the context. I will share that. I think before I did that, I don't know if you've ever heard of Miss Cleo. Have you ever heard of
no,
the
no.
psychic? So I don't know if she is was, because I don't know if Miss Cleo is still around, but in the States there was this psychic that you could call, and she used to have commercials. Um, when I used to watch, something besides streaming television, right? And it would be like, call Cleo, for your psychic reading. And when you call these psychics, they cost like dollars a
Yeah.
minute. Yeah. So I was so into this person, and I just couldn't get him to like respond or whatever the way that I wanted, that I called Miss Cleo. But I didn't talk to Cleo. I talked to like one of her psychic ladies. And she basically, it was like the advice a good friend gives you. Except for she should have steered me in the opposite direction instead of like, give this man a gift. It should have been like, stay away from him, honey. Like, get away. Go on with your life. Go back, go to school, mind your business. And I think that from that conversation is where this gift basket stemmed. And I gave it to him. And like his little brother answered the door because his little brother lived with him in these apartments. I mean, it was just such a stupid situation, but that's pretty ridiculous when I look back on it. Because I also chased him around for quite a while, like trying to get him to choose me, and he was not worth it. He was never worth it. So dumb. But I needed that validation or whatever I thought he could give me. It was bad. Um, yeah. And I think otherwise, like sometimes like it's just been acquiescing to like the mood of the like trying to read the room and trying to fit in. And
Yeah.
I think that trying to fit in and sort of play along, that's been ridiculous in some cases because they were possibly places where like not that I needed to fit in, but just like that I didn't need to try, you know. I didn't need to try to impress that person. Like why? You know, what bearing does a person like that type of person have on my life like in the long run, right? So,
Right.
but that first one, it's pretty good teenage stuff.
Yeah. You have great set of stories, Abhi. I'm loving this conversation.
Full of them, full of them. Just yep.
There should
Dig
be a
through the
kind of a,
archives.
yeah, yeah.
This is why I
Release
have a
episodes one
podcast.
by one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great to know. And are there any kind of misconceptions about relationships that you would love to debunk? And what would be those valuable lessons you learned from your marriage and then subsequent divorce as well?
Hmm. Uh, I don't know if I have anything to debunk. Well, I suppose it probably goes against like the opposite of like uh the typical expectations of people. I grew up in the Midwest and in an area that's also known as the Bible Belt. So just traditional, kind of religious, and for what it's worth, that sort of like what that looks like, I guess is what I mean. What that looks like is a lot of people getting married kind of young, people like wanting families and having families, and sometimes starting fairly young, like, out in college, out of college. And not that that doesn't happen everywhere, but that's just what I grew up in. And so it sort of felt like that's the expectation. You get married, you have kids, and you work. And I did get married, but I realized I didn't want kids. And to answer the second part of that question is that I learned that we really need to kind of understand our own values when we're going into relationships, and especially if you're talking about marriage, because it's pretty important to know like what the other person in the long run really wants, and for you to know as well for yourself. And I really didn't know who I was. I hadn't spent any time alone, and I just kind of thought like this is what you do. So, he's a great guy, like why wouldn't I say yes? But then it made me like later on down the line I realized we have sort of differing values or expectations or goals around success, and what that looks like, around having a family, having kids, spending time with family even. Our social preferences were very different. I made friends through that networking group. I made friends and we would go out and we would have fun and very innocent, but we would go to places where we could dance. And like around here, they're like super nice places, but we would just go dance and you just kind of ignore like all the stuff that's going on around you. And I wasn't trying to like meet other dudes or anything like that. I was happily with my person. But he also had a job. He'd bought a business that was about an hour away, and he had a couple friends in that area. And he had a very large family that he was very close to. So his social time is like hanging out with his brothers. And I'm like, well, I mean, okay, but I want to do this other stuff too. And if you're not okay with me doing it alone, like, then that's not okay, right? So it was really like values, communication, knowing how to talk about our issues, just stuff that sometimes I think in your 20s, you're really just trying to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
It's such a like formidable, is it formidable? Formable? Formative. Formative is the right term. Formative time of your life when you're just kind of figuring out like who you are, who you want to be, what you want. And I don't know, like I didn't need to be married, but it did help me, I guess. In the long run, I wouldn't be where I was without that relationship or who I am or whatever. But yeah, I learned a lot about that. And then just kind of like have to do, you don't have to have a marriage or have kids to be happy or be fulfilled in life. You don't have to even be in a romantic relationship. Like there's all kinds of relationships. Um, and so I don't really want to perpetuate that like everyone can live alone and should be alone, even if I can be kind of a hermit sometimes. I don't think that's always healthy.
Yeah.
Uh, you should have your support network and your people that you can have some kind of relationship. My sister and I are very close, and I have a pretty close circle of friends. So I think that's important.
Right. And relationships these days are getting too complex. Like we have to balance it really well. And it's more of like finding that right person to be with. That is
Yeah.
again a kind of a very complex situation. But you just have to trust. You need to have that open communication, and then it gets better. And you
Yeah.
just have to uphold our expectations as well, because they won't be getting completed all of the time. So we just need to see how we can balance them and move ahead with the time. Because then as we get into it, as we spend more and more time, we feel that we get comfortable with that person as well. There are
Yeah.
many modalities that we have to focus on, but that's the journey of life. And Abby, you did share onto this. Like I did read your thread post that something hilarious or like unexpected thing happened on your honeymoon. You did release an episode as well. So if we can have that information or that incident in bits and pieces, our audience would love to know. I'll be plugging this full episode link in the description as well. So
Okay. Okay, well, yes, I would say if you really I'll give you like a little synopsis.
yeah,
I called the episode Lost in Mexico, a honeymoon story, and it's because on the first night that my ex-husband and I were in Mexico, I stayed in the room. He went down to like the commons, like bar area to explore, and he didn't turn back up at the room. Yeah. So I full like people might remember depending on where they're from if you knew the story of Natalie Holloway, the girl who disappeared in Aruba. Like this is some years ago. I've been divorced for like over a decade. So this is some years ago. But that's what popped into my mind as I was like calling his cell phone over and over and over, and it was not picking up. And it was like at some point, like when a cell phone gets shut off and you just know it goes straight to voicemail, and he wasn't picking up and I didn't know where he was. And that's the synopsis. So that's not a really fun way. He was fine. He did turn up. He was fine. I did have to retrieve him out of jail, Mexican jail. So not the
yeah,
most fun experience to have on your honeymoon. And it's not really like, in the time, like I was not laughing about it, but I mean, we did end up like I got him back the next day and we did end up having an okay trip and we found ways to sort of laugh at our situation even though it was kind of traumatizing actually. So that I kind of gave it away, but like I just don't want people to think like, "Oh my god, what, well obviously she divorced him so he's alive." But but I don't know, I don't know if it was like a red flag. I don't know if it was a precursor. But it was not the most fun way to start a honeymoon. But it's a really good story. And so I released an episode that was talking about my marriage and kind of some of the lessons and whatnot without like trying to drag him because I actually still respect him as a person. We just did not work out together. But I'm like, I really can't share the story of my marriage without sharing the honeymoon story because that's like a that's like a thing, like in the chapter of your lives together. Like that's a pretty significant incident that happens. Um and it also there was a time towards the end of our marriage where he also did not show back up at home one night after I had talked to him and he said that he was on his way home and he sounded fine. And so then like years later, I'm going through like well, I guess it was only about 2 years because that's how long we were married. But about 2 years later, I'm going through the same thing where I'm like, why am I calling police again? Like this is insane. Like why am I going through this again? It's nuts. So yeah, it was that
that incident, that moment. I'm sure
yeah.
like it might have been very difficult in real life, and that moment would you won't ever forget that.
No, it's pretty wild. Like you just don't expect. I mean, you would never you never want like those things to happen to you while you're traveling, so you just don't really expect. Even knowing like the current environment or what was going on in Mexico at the time, just kind of knowing little bits about that era and maybe it's still going on, I don't really know. But and just in talking to, family and people, like it was just wild and it's kind of surreal that like that would even happen. And I still like I say in the episode, like I still don't truly know. I don't feel like I truly know the truth. I don't even know if we ever discussed it much after that. Like we kind of talked about it then, and then we just moved on with our lives. you know,
Maybe
um,
time to invite him on a podcast.
right? It's like, oh, should I ask him like 10 years later? Like, so did you like, did you like actually instigate that, or was it, or were you targeted? Like, do we really know? I don't know. I don't know if I'll know the answer. But I do know that he was pretty injured, and it wasn't, it wasn't great. He was fine, but he wasn't 100%. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Find out more about this on Abby's podcast. I'll be definitely plugging in the link. You should listen because this is some experience that you won't love to go through.
No, no.
Yeah. And Abby, you have got podcast as well. So this is how we got connected. This is how I got to your profile. That is what makes people connect with. So what's been the biggest surprise, the good or the bad, you have encountered so far?
From podcasting,
Yeah.
um, I just love it so much. It feels like when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a rock star. There's always like kind of those things that we want to be that probably is not
Right.
really super realistic. Um, and I liked to make mixtapes and think of myself as like a DJ or something like that. And I think that this is kind of the closest thing that you get to that, because you get to, especially if you produce your own episodes, like you get to edit yourself, making the intro with like the music. Like I love that stuff. I love picking out. I've started 2 podcasts, and that is one of my favorite parts, is picking out my music, because that sets a vibe, for the show. And I like sitting down to the mic and just kind of like talking. And then I try to do it in a more structured way, just because I know how easily I ramble off and then can't find my way back. But so I try to structure my episodes for myself, for the listener, really, and for myself, so I can deliver the information that I want. But I think so honestly, for years when I dated a lot more, people told me to start a blog, and I'd be like, yeah, but you just can't get the same, the delivery and the tone in right. I couldn't, through
Right.
writing, because I'm not like a writer. But man, if I'd known about podcasting then, we would have been podcasting. Like we would have been done, had a podcast, and all the dating stories would be shared with everybody, and not just my lash clients. Like everyone would know how crazy it is. So it just felt like, wow, this is, feels so natural, and it feels fun. And then I've really loved the fact that you can connect with people like this. Like, yeah, we could set up a Zoom time, like a coffee chat or whatever, but
Right.
this really gives us like a purpose to connect with people and learn things about them in a way and on a platform that we might not have had the chance to. I had a guest from the UK who is in the aesthetics industry, but she just has a very vastly different career. And she's involved in different organizations that certify people internationally. So, like, if I wanted to go overseas and do aesthetics, that's the organization I would go through. And she sits on the board of that. And it was so cool to talk to her, because that felt really expansive, and like, man, I'm just learning so much from this person. And so I think that it gives us a chance to just connect with other people that we may not have ever, connected with. I mean, we're across the world from each other. So,
Right. And there are many benefits of podcasting. I have been doing it for more than 4+ years while doing my 9 to 5. So that is something that we all have to enjoy. Otherwise, it gets tedious, it gets boring as well. You just have to infuse
yeah.
some kind of what we can say is like glitters or anything around that. You just have to be into that enthusiastic mode so that it becomes quite enjoyable. And again, it's fun, like to interact with people, to know their journey, to know how they think about certain aspects of their life. That is something that keeps me going with the podcasting thing. And again, the benefits are for real. You just have to put in a lot of work. You have been managing for the clients as well, so it's a great learning experience. Now, coming on to the last part of this episode, there's few rapid fire questions that I would love to ask you.
Okay. Good luck to
uh,
me. Rapid fire.
they're pretty easy. 3 questions. First, favorite guilty pleasure.
uh, guilty pleasures.
Just be fast.
Pop. I know. And I'm not efficient. I'm not fast. Guilty pleasures. Probably Um, what's a guilty pleasure that I have? I don't know. I'm terrible at this. Oh my gosh, now I feel like I'm on the spot. It's usually like some sort of pop music, that
Okay,
like that you should like not really like, but I like it. Like Justin Timberlake's my guilty pleasure or Mariah Carey or whatever, but I grew up with her, so yeah.
cool. Most used productive app.
I really like Notion. I'm really liking Notion and I really like Claude AI. And I really like
That is,
Descript. I like Descript as well. Riverside is, man, we're gonna talk about apps. I know I'm supposed to be rapid fire, but like those things are
yeah.
changing. They're just changing so fast.
Right. Descript is great, I would say. I have been recently started using it, just getting hold of my hands on it. Will
Yeah.
definitely reach out if I need any kind of help with respect to it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Dream vacation.
Oh, gosh, Europe. Just like to trek out all over Europe, I think. Haven't done that. So,
Fantastic. Yeah,
yeah.
on my list as well. Okay, that's all, Abby. No more
Thank
pressure.
you. Phew.
Well, this was such a great conversation, Abby. I loved it. We were able to cover a lot many areas through your passion, through your life. So it did really give me a lot of key takeaways, and I feel that viewers and listeners are going to enjoy this because you are a bunch of like a great person, a set of person with a lot of values, insights, humor, and whatnot. So it makes you a kind of a great person to talk with and have this interaction. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time. And if anyone would love to get in touch with Abby, I'll be mentioning her social link in episode description. Please have a conversation and you'll thoroughly enjoy it. So thank you so much, Abby. I wish you all the
Thank you,
best in your
Rohit.
future endeavors.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
Thank you. Stay happy, stay healthy. Bye bye. Take care.